Hey there, what I see is people letting their businesses run their lives versus them leading their business to love their life. I see this in corporate jobs, and I see where we step into expectations that other people have of us that do not honor us and allow us to lead our own life. Welcome to this episode, and I'm glad you're here to listen. From the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Lead Your Lit Up Life with Debbie Heiser. My name is Debbie Heiser. I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what's important to them so that they can lead the life that they really want to have. I've seen way too many business owners let their business run their lives versus being very crystal clear on what they want their life to look like and having the business be a catalyst to help them get there. Now, today we have two more episodes around the universal laws. And this universal law is a little, how do I say this? I don't want people getting caught up in the word gender. So I'm going to change the word gender to yin and yang. Meaning a holistic, if you think about even the law of polarity, there's a holistic thing to something. So for instance, if I hold up a Post-it pad, for those of you listening, the back of it is just a little sheet that says Post-it notes on the back, where what I see is orange and has some writing on it. And so there's two sides to everything. And what we're going to talk about is how it's important to have both sides of yourself when you are setting out to manifest, when you're setting out to make something happen that you want to happen. So part of this, I'm going to read this law to you, where it's also about the fact that everything is here and it's here now, which we've talked about before. But what it talks about here is that substance can be transmuted, but it can never be destroyed. If you remember that in the first law that we talked about, and if you haven't heard that one, I highly suggest you go back and listen to it. It's about the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. So if substance can be transmuted, but it can't ever be destroyed, then it's going from a formless state to a physical state and back again. So sometimes when you hear people say there's nothing new under the sun, that's kind of that thought, right? Like there's things that happen. And we'll talk about the law of gestation as well with this. But ultimately, it goes into a physical state and back again. And this is the progressive, creative operation of the universe. So when you think about vehicles, for instance, I'm hearing a car drive by my office right now. You think about Ford, when he invented, I don't know if it was Model A or Model T, my dad could tell you, but the point being is he had this idea drop in, which is the formless state that I mentioned earlier, right? Like this formless state comes in the spiritual realm, really, of like these ideas, these desires that you wish to do. And so then you have a choice. You either choose to create something with that, or you choose to let it continue to be an idea. Now, what ends up happening, and I don't know how many of you have experienced this. I remember sitting on a ski lift thinking, oh my gosh, somebody needs to invent. And then I'm like, I should invent this thing that attaches to your ski coat that has your phone in it so that if you drop your phone, it doesn't fall off the ski lift down into the snow. Well, sure enough, a couple months later, this is pre-COVID, I was flying, and in those little magazines that they used to provide that had things for sale on them, they had one in there. And I'm like, oh, somebody did invent this, right? So I had this idea. I chose not to take action on it. Well, what ends up happening is because everything is out there, it's going to go to somebody else eventually. So think about that in your life, because there's probably things that you've thought of and you thought, oh, and then it shows up. So the point of this is that it goes from the physical state and back again and back and forth. So it's like a flow. And this progressive creative operation comes from the universe or from God. And this creative process requires both the yin and the yang. We need to have both in order to produce And how it talks about it is to beget, engender, and produce something. So the feminine principle is receptive. And again, it's not feminine, masculine. I need to stop that because that's what I'm used to, but the yin and the yang. So it's receptive. There's a receptive part of you where you are open to receive. Now, I have to tell you, I cannot tell you how many times I've been with people, and myself included, until I had some experiences in France that really opened me up to this, where someone is trying to provide something for you, even if it's to open a door for you. And I can't tell you how many times I see people turn down someone helping them or doing an act of receiving. So I would really challenge you, as you're listening to this, to go forward from this point and identify, when are there times that people try to provide maybe for me, or the universe is providing for me, and I kind of close up and I don't open up and allow for this to come into my life. I'm not opening up to receiving what is coming. Now, sometimes you don't open up to receive because that's not what you want, and that's way okay. But as an example, I think about times when people would offer to help me with luggage. Or for instance, I was at Trader Joe's purchasing some wine for this event that I'm putting on in October. So by the time you listen to this, it's over. And I was really struggling. It was like a case of wine and it was heavy to get out of the cart. And this gentleman said to me, "Do you need some help?" And in the past, I would have gone, no, I've got it. And I said, you know what? Yes, absolutely. I could use some help, because I've learned to open up to receive when that happens. So we have to be receptive. We have to be open to receive. It's imaginative and generative. So it's this like innovation and creativity, and it corresponds to the subconscious mind. So it's how we generate things. So we have these ideas, and then it's how we create and generate the creativity around that idea. Then the other side of this expresses in more of, well, I'm just going to read it. The principle expresses actively extending impressions and is characterized by will, and it corresponds to the conscious mind. So it's about action. It's about extending into those. It's about putting things together. So being receptive and creative and open, and then taking the action, stepping in to what it is that you want to do, doing the things that are hard, right? And so you need both to be able to do that. Now, there's another subsidiary law here that's important to think about. So let's back up. Substance can never be destroyed, but it starts out, or it doesn't even start, it flows back and forth. If you think about an infinity sign, it flows back and forth into ideas, creativity, and then comes into form in some way, shape, or form. And then again, it comes back and goes back into ideas. And some of this you see in like iterations of something. We're not still driving around in the same cars that were invented years ago. So that's kind of an example of that. So we have to have the ability to receive. We have to have the ability to take action in order to make this happen. And I would suggest sometimes some quick action. And there'll be another podcast on this around awareness and identity, but some quick action to then get your conscious mind and your conscious and subconscious mind together. So the receptive, imaginative, and generative side of you really is tapped into that subconscious mind. And then the extending of impressions or taking the action, making movement happen with this is really about the conscious mind and the decision making that you make. So the subsidiary law is the law of gestation. And so basically for everything, there is a season, right? So it says all seeds have a gestation or incubation period before they come into maturity. Goals and ideas are spiritual or non-physical seeds with unknown gestation periods. This leaves open the possibility of both instant and delayed manifestation. Now, what becomes interesting about the subsidiary law is two things. One, there are seasons, there's timing for things. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to put things into motion, right? Just because Henry Ford had the idea of creating the vehicle doesn't mean that overnight it was created, right? Like there's a period of time that the creation takes place. Now, what I see happen sometimes with people is they'll use this as an excuse not to take action. So it's really important to step back and look at this and say, oh, I'm gestating on this, or I'm putting this together. Is it that, or is it a fear? And just check yourself, right? Because they're both are there and readily available. And so I just recommend to you to stop and kind of think, okay, if I've been talking about doing this now for 3 years, chances are I either need to step into it or let it go. And that way somebody else can put it into the world. So this law of gestation is about having an incubation period, letting something come into maturity, and also knowing when to push and when not to, right? Like this quick decisions and quick action is really the conscious mind part of it. And sometimes we have to sit back and allow the subconscious, imaginative, and generative piece of it to take place in order for this to happen. I always say it's easier to move a moving cart than it is to get one started. And so you do want to start moving. You don't have to make the step from A to Z, but you just need to go step A to B. B and Z sound a little bit alike, so that's probably not the easiest one, but just taking the first step. And so sometimes the law of gestation means you're taking a step forward, and you continue to take steps forward as in faith as they are given to you. And part of that is because gestation is happening, right? So it means take some action, but also allow and be open to receive what's coming so that you know which action to appropriately take. So this law can be a little bit confusing sometimes. If you want to talk more about this, or you're a business owner or someone in corporate that's wanting to start a business, please reach out to me and book a clarity call. You can find my website in the show notes. And I would love to chat with you for 30 minutes or so and see how these laws are showing up in your life, or talk about what your desires are and help you get really clear. So with that, it's a wrap. Everyone have a fantastic week, and we'll talk to you next week.
See the colors of the rainbow. Find your own kind of happy. See the colors.